Good morning and welcome back to Hyrule, where, as many of you know, we are currently going through building a large-scale minifigure version of the Breath of the Wild Hyrule Castle from Breath of the Wild. And this is obviously a large project that lacks a lot of scale, and the purpose of today is that 36,000 parts in, we're going to be taking a look and giving you some context to everything we've done so far. And I warn you, it is a lot and a little bit confusing. So join with me as I discuss what's up next, what's not finished, and maybe even take a look and a quick walk around some in-game areas as well. So the reason I always start off orientating it like this is so that you can get a good idea of what's front and back. Over here, this base plate represents the bridge at the front of the castle where most people enter for the first time, and working our way around clockwise, this big empty gap of base plates is the West Passage. Zelda's Tower and Study would sit about here, obviously higher elevation, and then the build that we've built goes all the way around from the back right quarter all the way up until the docks at the back. Now the reason these plates are missing is because they're under construction. I'll be showing you a little bit of that and hinting at the West Passage today, but as a general rule of thumb, this outline of grey base plates sort of represents the edging of the castle, and that's sort of what you need to know. Now, most of our attention has been focused on this back left quadrant here, which you can see consists of 4 wall segments as long as a load of other different areas. You can see we've got the water at the bottom, and the paths, which previously seemed all disconnected, now of course flow together. Now, obviously the project started with the docks, which can be seen as interior, and we're going to take a look at all the interiors slightly later on. But starting here and working our way from back to front in a sense, we have this little wall segment here, which rests directly above the docks entrance, which comes all the way across to the entrance to the lockup from the reverse hand side, which you can see in here. And if I just focus in on this specific location at the moment, I can show you that this path comes out of the interior, comes up and around, as you can see over here, and then flows all the way up the hill to the secret pond, and then does the switchback all the way up to the top. And this is something that we usually just can't see. Now obviously it then continues higher and higher, but that's not important right now. From the outside you can see the various different platforms that come together, as well as the big one here. This is one of our areas under construction, and of course this sits directly over the break-in section or the lockup, but we'll take a look at that again later on. Overall you can see it's quite impressive, but remember this is just one backhand quadrant of the model, and in fact I think it's about time that I show you some of that switchback in Tears of the Kingdom, which is ironically more difficult to do because half the castle is floating. One of the cooler things we get to see using one of these windows to the inside is of course the docks. And if you watch me zoom out, you'll watch that landscape of the backdrop disappear and be hidden by the cave on this south side. Now of course that's not the only way to access it, as all of these upper layers are indeed removable. So with a couple of clicks you can see I can reveal the interior here, which not only consists of the flame bait puzzle from Breath of the Wild, but then the full interior of the docks, including all of the passageways and other dock elements down here at the bottom, where jetties and boats and cargo may land. But then also on this side here you've got the staircase up to the flame, as well as then the secret passage to the library over in the back. Let's zoom back out again though, as that's not our only interior to take a look at. As previously shown, along the bottom of the switchback over here, we have an entrance into the lockup. So again, with a couple more removable segments, you can see that I can zoom on in inside of here. And if I bring this up, you can see a corridor, which is actually not accessible in Breath of the Wild, which then brings us into the major lockup here with 8 prison cells, various gates and other elements, all of which have a little bit of detail in them. And then that comes down to the major gate at the end, which if you turn right through, you're brought into the Hinox room, and you can see the MIDI scale Hinox sat in the Hylian Shield challenge room. Of course, being in mind that this model is based off Age of Calamity, there's lots of grass, and the Stalnox is, well, not yet Stal. That previous corridor that we mentioned, you can see, turns around over here, and that enters into the water pump room, which has received many an update, and you can see the basic structure for what will continue up probably another 2 levels one day. And then of course over here we have an open corridor, which is what leads to the West Passage, which is of course what I'm going to show you now. Now the West Passage doesn't actually connect, or at least not directly. You can actually see that they're chiseling through from the West Passage and are about to break through, and in Breath of the Wild of course Link uses his bombs to break through the wall. As for the end of this corridor itself, its fate will be determined once the wider portion of the model is complete. There are lots of corridors which are blocked off, both in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom and Age of Calamity, that don't have a purpose, and while many of them do have locations revealed by one of the other 2 games, this is one of the locations where we'll be adding our own room, perhaps a storeroom, a fan Easter egg room, or passageway downwards, down to the depths of Ganondorf's corpse. It all remains to be seen in future episodes of the castle. But in the actual West Passage itself, you can see some mining materials, some torches, which brings us into another Korok puzzle. This is of course the boiled egg room, where you boil an egg in the water and then feed it to the 3 Koroks, and then of course you get your Korok seed. However, that room also has a secondary purpose. There are lots of guardian excavations happening on the other side. You can see the egg, which of course is important for the Korok puzzle itself, but also the various guardian heads being excavated, because remember of course 100 years before, and Calamity hasn't happened yet, these guardians are still being dug up. We're going to ignore this passageway off to the side, that's for the wider project, I don't want to spoil too much, but the room then exits through this very small winding passageway and almost double backs on itself. And this will link into the section that's going to sit above it, as well as the exterior wall, and all of that is still stuff that needs to be focused on in upcoming episodes. As for the wider portions of the model, what comes next? Well, as you can clearly see, some of these walls still need texturing. Areas such as this element up here and this wall here, this one needs a fix as well. Both need to be textured, just like the pre-existing walls on E plate and A plate. The grass needs to be added over here, as well as water, and the West Passage continued. Furthermore, this secondary layer that is appearing and slowly climbing its way along the top needs to be continued in this direction to help prepare for the foundations of Zelda's Tower and also the exit for the water pump room. Meanwhile, over this way, I'd love to see the docks fully enclosed and continuing the base layer of rockwork all the way around, as well as the second layer one day. This one should be pretty easy and could take us all the way up to this plate here. The front right corner is the corner that will probably be done last, as while I have plans to get up to the bridge, my focus is then going to shift to the back of the model. As for going upwards, the second height checks that were completed over on this level over here are now done, and I feel no need to go upwards for the time being. However, part of me does wish to place the sanctum as well as deal with all those interior rooms and areas, so there is a chance that the back half could end up seeing itself completely finished to full height way before the first half even leaves the second floor. That's pretty much all I have to show you, so let's just go and take a look at some very nice last minute renders. And before we finish up for today, I just wanted to walk you through a couple more images that we had here to give you some more placement. So here we can see the castle viewed from the back, and I'm going to line up a couple of points on this image to show you where they overlap. So here, this red area, that represents this large sticking outcrop out front of this untextured wall segment. To back it up further, in blue you can see the actual turret itself circled, and then in yellow, just in the distance, you can see the smaller wall segment on the slightly smaller finished island, giving you an idea of where this segment falls and, well, how accurate it's looking. You can also see the switchback, as I call it, up above, obviously leading to nowhere in Tears of the Kingdom, but you can see it appearing above the yellow circle to the top left. Similarly, here's another image from the back. I've had to ramp up the contrast on this one due to the atmospheric fog the game loves to put in this area. And to start with, you can see the red circle lining up with the cave mouth and the blue circle lining up once again with that small textured wall segment, again as I mentioned a slightly different angle. And then in yellow you can see the curved wall, although you saw these earlier in the game walkarounds. And then lastly, here you can see this is being viewed from the position of the red angle, representing where Link is standing and where he's looking. You can see that he's looking up the switchback, which of course is going to the middle of nowhere, just as in the surrender that I have in the bottom left-hand corner. From the top, you can see how it sort of curves round and then heads back towards the dock segment. So hopefully that helps to fill in some of the visual gaps for you. As promised to end off today's, we're going to have a look at some of the renders I've taken over the last 20 weeks of building this castle. So starting off in the docks very early on, the build wasn't even finished. As you can see, there's missing walls everywhere, but it gives you a look of how it would look to walk along those upper balconies of the docks towards the flaming brazier. Next up, it was a little bit more complete. You've got the arches either side, the walls are in, and of course the lighting's really bad because this was a studio render from potentially about 3 years ago, but it gives you a whole kind of experience of what the docks is like internally. And here it was a couple of weeks later, once we started to add interior and external walls. The docks, of course, themselves are complete. You can see all the pink filler brick, the flame sword, the water's in, as well as the beginnings of an outside cliff, which was completed slightly further in a couple more weeks' time with this little exterior position, preparing for the addition of A1, the wall segment that goes on top. Here, of course, you can see that wall segment is indeed in, as well as over on the right, we started to prepare land for the prison, including a new wall segment, or at least the sketch and model version of it, as well as some trees down below. Here it was a couple of hours later when I added all the texturing in. I mean, it was a couple of months, let's be real, but also the full tower there. You can see it's expanding even more towards the prison, which of course you can see the cave entrance here, as well as the prison entrance over on the far right. Here are the trees next to the prison entrance using that newer technique. And here inside the prison you get a look at all 8 cells as well as the water lines that run through the middle. Up top, of course, the walls continued to rise, the rock went up, and of course we had statues like the Guardian that were being erected as they were being dug up out of the ground. Here you can see that addition close up, all of the weeds as he's being untangled and excavated. And of course it continued to expand with the water pump room, adding more towers to the left and right and more rock work as we continue to ride upwards. Here, of course, inside the water pump room, you can see all the unique details, such as the mops and Brillo sponges, buckets, barrels of wine, bottles, the waterfall, and a little shot through the door. I've got to show you how it would look to a figure, of course. And then, of course, at figure height here, you can see the model as it reaches its impressive 4-tower status. It's getting much taller now. And here you can see it from the top. Here's the quarter that's been completed so far. It looks really detailed, really intense. But then you zoom out and you see the rest of the castle and everything that's left to do. And don't worry, that of course, that front left quadrant is getting very close to completion now. Obviously a couple more weeks to show you guys that. But I'm still wanted to give you guys some more context, as I feel the biggest problem with the castle is that you really can't tell what's happening and where everything is built. And that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this look back through the castle and everything it has to offer over the ages. And I hope you stick around to another 20 weeks where we probably do this again. My goal with this series is obviously to try and make it more accessible to people that don't have as much familiarity with the castle as I do, as it's a little bit insane how much detail I have with it. In the future, I look forward to showing you the West Passage, and don't worry, the next custom set in the Tears of the Kingdom wave is coming next Friday, and that will be Z0076 device. Or is it 77? I've done too many, I forget. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.